Hello and welcome back to Let's Play the Black Pits 2 with me, Bring It Down. Buckle up because we're going to read all of the flavor text for all the unique items with all the merchants. Now this won't be all the flavor text that we read because we do unlock more weapons in each tier. I think there's 3 or 4 tiers. Again, I don't remember how many matches it is per tier. I think it's 3 or 5. I always get the number mixed up. And also you can get more unique weapons by the reward reputation system that they have in place. Anyway, we'll start with the root of the problem. Oh boy, it's a lot. Off to a good start. This Enchanting Club is said to have had existed since the time of the fall of Netheril and the birth of the great Anauroch Desert. While the toll in the civilization was great, the true victims of this age were nature's creatures, condemned to stand and watch as their homes decayed and died. As habitats receded, those that remained were invaded by displaced hordes of creatures, the more impatient of which marched on unspoiled land, taking whatever they wished. This particular weapon is said to have come from a dryad's tree, a final gift to nature's cause from a woodland spirit that could not hold back the invaders of her land. Hers was a bittersweet pain, as her wood might not have suffered so if it had not been so strong and lush. Less respecting scholars have since bestowed the item's ironic name, though the humor is not appreciated among nature's more devout followers. Bone Club +2, +3 versus Undead. This vicious club was created hundreds of years ago, reportedly by a shaman on a quest for revenge. His family had fallen to undead, and so personal was his rage that he amputated his own leg, using the femur for the body of the weapon. Magical runes empower it, though it is likely the sheer force of the shaman's hatred would have served on its own. Ashadina. Lady Ashadina was a remarkable strategist who honed her skills against the orc armies in the Year of the Black Horde. She met Durgat Wiltoon, the warrior that wielded this weapon, when he foiled an ambush led by the great orc Varstok, and soon after made him her field captain. After serving at each other's side for the entirety of the war, they fell in love and eventually married. Historians report that Durgat named his warhammer after his bride, to remind himself of the love he fought to protect. What Lady Ashadina thought of this is unknown. Ardulia's Fall. Ardulia the Agile was a man whose speed and skill at knife play made him exceptionally lethal in battle, and he repeatedly proved it by leading raids on settlements along the Sword Coast. He would often challenge a village leader for possession of the town, and with his speed, the duels were always quickly decided in his favor. Ardulia met his match one spring morn, however, when he battled the priest Itgen, who wielded this mace. Ardulia seemed to stagger under each blow, slowing his pace to recoup and regain his breath. Without his speed, Ardulia was lost, and fell to the measured attacks of Itgen. Mauler's Arm +2. Jurg the Mauler was proud chieftain of a northern tribe, but feared he would be the last of his family to lead. His son Cullen was sickly, and clearly couldn't meet the traditional requirements of strength for a chieftain. Jurg knew that wise leadership took more than brawn, however, so he bargained to enchant this mace such that it would cover Cullen's weakness. Who Jurg made the deal with is unknown, but the cost was apparently high. Cullen came to rule soon after. The Sleeper +2. This belonged to Sithalk, an uncharacteristically evil elf known as the Slaver of the Sword Coast. Until his sudden death several years ago, Sithalk commanded a large force of human, dwarven, and gnomish brigands, using the Sleeper to keep them in line. It has a chance to incapacitate any human, dwarf, gnome, or halfling by inducing deep slumber, though elves are conveniently immune. Wyvern's Tail +2. The large spike at the head of this morning star is actually the lethal stinger of a wyvern. The fighter mage Sidej created this weapon, using his magical abilities to keep the stinger capable of producing poison. The magic he used has actually made the Wyvern's Tail a living weapon that pulses with life in the hands of its wielder. Halcyon. The electrum-plated shaft of this weapon hums with magical power. Occasionally, blue bolts of energy run down the length of the spear, charging it. In battle, when it hits an opponent, it strikes for additional electricity damage. Staff of Curing, I guess? Yeah, we'll read it. Torm is said to manifest these items during times of great trouble, granting to the priests who care for the wounded, diseased, and poisoned. It is not to be taken for granted, however, as the enchantment, though useful, is fleeting. It must be used with all due care. The Gravebinder +2. Longtooth the Gravebinder. Discovered relatively recently by adventurers in the south, the abilities of this weapon went unknown for several years. Magical tomes eventually revealed its extensive history as an assassin's tool, and was dubbed the Gravebinder. It was stolen soon after. What am I saying? Stiletto of Demarchus. Most who take up the trade of murder for hire do so for reasons other than personal pleasure, but not so the Lady Demarche. She took special pleasure in the torture of her targets, which is why she made this dagger. With but one touch of its polished blade, an opponent was rendered immobile, incapable of so much as screaming, yet the victim could watch and feel all that happened to them. While her opponent was thus held, the lady would slowly bleed them, sometimes taking several hours before allowing her subject to succumb to the final agony of death. The lady finally fell victim to her own evil. Disarmed by a rival and struck by her own stiletto, her fate was soon sealed. Ooh, 20% chance. Pretty good. Boomerang Dagger +2. A fallen woolspinner, an ambitious halfling from a well-to-do family, left his home to spend several years adventuring. During his travels, he ended up staying with a family of dwarven weaponsmiths. Much impressed by their throwing axes, which always returned to the hands of the wielder, Fallen sought to make a dagger that could do the same. With the help of his dwarven friends, he succeeded, creating several of the famous Fallen Boomerang daggers. Ilbratha, +1. This ancient bronze sword is set with 6 matching bloodstones, and was apparently forged for Azaun I, a long-dead king of Cormyr. It saw little use, and eventually found its way to a favorite of the king's guards. Despite the aid of its illusionary magic, that unnamed soldier fell in a later battle, and the sword was lost to brigands or scavengers. So that one's really good to have. Arbane Sword of Agility. One of the many created the name of the mage, who first discovered how to enchant a blade in this manner. This was the weapon of the outlaw Garno, and many a cleric died at its edge. Garno became disillusioned with the gods when his family was put to the torch by clerics of Loviatar, and spent his life seeking revenge. Despite his focused hatred of the devout, it is thought that one of the gods of chaos had a hand in Garno's acquisition of this sword, delighting in the havoc that followed the young man. Sword of Flame +1. This blade burns with a magical fire, and a charring blast is released whenever a hit is scored. Meta Infernum is etched on the hilt, though it appears somewhat faded and may not be original to the sword. Varscona +2. Blades of this type were long used by Sharan priests during the sacrificial rites of Feast of the Moon ceremonies. Legends say that when she passed on, the remains of the sword's wielder were mummified and the blade was placed within her chest as a symbol of power. In the first stage of a long-forgotten ritual, she was said to have been exhumed in a season, born again in some new form. Unfortunately, cult wars killed the few that knew of her existence. Her tomb became a prison where she was forgotten, and there she developed a rage that bordered on insanity. Her grave was eventually found, but it was deserted and gave no indication of her whereabouts. Some venture to say that her anger was so concentrated that she became one with the very blade of her weapon. Regardless, after hundreds of years surrounded by constant hate, the sword harvested a power of its own. It is now exceedingly deadly in combat. Sword of Baldran. The Sword of Baldran was the favored weapon of the famous adventurer who founded the city of Baldur's Gate. It is part of a set of weapons and armor that was stolen from the museum in the city of Baldur's Gate. 10% magic resist is always really handy. Abruin. Baslan was a large man, rumored far from his hearing to be a werebear. He long wielded the sword Abruin in the protection of his village, slaying giant spiders that plagued the area. The sword protected him from their poison, and also allowed him to see invisible red wizards who controlled some of the more fantastic variants. The reason for the enmity is unknown. Ooh, Spider's Bane. The sword was originally forged by the dwarves of the Orothiarch tribe in Cloakwood. They created the blade to help foster goodwill between them and the Grand Dukes of Baldur's Gate. Wielded by the Grand Dukes for about a century, the sword was eventually lost, ironically in a fight against ettercaps and spiders. Who wields the blade is now unknown, but its recovery would aid greatly in fighting the current spider infestation that plagues the Cloakwood. Flame of the North +2. The title does not refer to the blade itself, but rather to the woman who originally wielded it in the icy hinterlands of Faerun. Her name was Karara, Carrera, and she was a veritable firestorm that swept across Arctic trolls and the northern Orcish tribes. She was a hated enemy of many a shaman, whose magic often floundered against her fury. After a lifetime of raucous battle, it was old age that eventually claimed her. The sword is passed on to her granddaughter, an adventurer who presumably brought it to Oh, versus Chaotic Evil. Didn't know that. Bala's Axe, Wizard Slayer. Is this a throwing axe? No. Bala was a foul-tempered prince of a Gully Dwarf clan, which was enslaved by the cruel elven mage in Thesk. Though Bala managed to escape the more cowardly traits of his race, he was even more filthy and obnoxious than the average Gully Dwarf. A second of his enslavement, Bala crept into the mage's lair and cracked the elf's skull open. Although rumor has it that it was the dwarf stench that overcame the mage, it was in fact his enchanted axe that dispelled the elf's magical defenses. It is obvious from the poor workmanship that Bala himself crafted the axe. The mystery lies in where its power originates. After a lengthy career of mage slaying, Bala died, never having revealed his secret to those who were willing to risk a lice infestation by approaching him. Some say that the axe was powered by Bala's intense hatred of wizards. The axe gives the owner the ability to dispel magic once a day. Pretty good. Handguard's Axe. This weapon had a lofty beginning. It has been overshadowed by the exploits of its most famous owner, Handguard the Dwarf. Handguard made a habit of trying to knock melons and apples off the heads of comrades. He missed more often than not, due in part to an unfortunate fondness for ale. Let's see, any other... Oh, the Tugenbow, or Tweegenbow. The Tweegans are nomadic people wildly dispersed across the steppe regions of Faerun, but bound together by a common bloodline. The bows they make are especially tailored for their mobile warriors. The process used is carefully guarded, but the result is well known. Any bow of Tweegan origin can be fired faster than is possible with a normal one. Ripper +2. This composite longbow is one of many made by a half-elven craftsman whose name has been lost to history. At one time there were several hundred in use, a favorite of scouts who patrolled the Anarak Desert, but many have been lost or destroyed. Only a few are still known to exist, and they see little use due to the tremendous strength they require. I think... oh, no. The Army Scythe. Light crossbow speed, the Army Scythe. A short-lived outpost of humans in the frozen forest unearthed this weapon, and many others from the ruins of an ancient settlement deep within that cold land. Never knowing the names of their extinct benefactors, the colonists used these tools to carve a large territory for themselves, though in the end it was for naught. Crushed by a superior number of hobgoblins, these unfortunate souls have joined the ancients in their anonymity. Then Heavy Crossbow of Searing, +1. A marvel of engineering, this crossbow covers bolts in oil and sets them alight when fired. It is enchanted as well, likely to keep the mechanism working smoothly. It bears the hallmarks of the inventor's god, Gond. Sling of Seeking, +1. Unlike most other slings, the Sling of Seeking does not require ammunition of any kind. When no bullets are equipped, the sling fires magical ammunition in the form of +1 bullets, making it an ideal weapon to use against magically protected foes. It can also fire normal ammunition. Asp's Nest. While working for the Shadow Thieves, Fargan Foal collected thousands of small poisonous snakes to create the Asp's Nest. Fargan took each snake, and with her powerful magic, she made a dart of each. She made the dart so that when it strikes an opponent, the snake returns to life, biting and inflicting poison damage on the target. The title Asp's Nest referred to the entire collection of darts, most of which have vanished, either destroyed in use or lost on a long-forgotten battlefield. Oh wow, 40 hit points of damage is actually pretty good. I think that's everything. Alright. Shadow Armor +3. This is a +3 studded leather armor that melts into shadows, created for use by the Shadow Masters of Am. The Shadow Masters are of the highest order within the Shadow Thieves hierarchy. Skin of the Ghoul +4. A clever thief, Damien One Knife always tried to gain from the assets of his enemies, no matter the circumstances. After an intense battle with several ghouls in which 2 of his companions perished, Damien decided to even the odds in future encounters. He skinned one of the undead creatures and brought the hide to a halfling armorer talented in enchanting leather. When the suit was finished, it was magically protective against physical attacks and paralysis. Not very epic, perhaps, but practical. Dark Mail +3. Whether by design or through exposure to intense heat in battle, the chain links of this armor are coal black throughout. While legends usually speak of knights in shining armor facing great beasts, the fire-resistant enchantment on this suit suggests equally great, if unheralded, battles with fire-breathing creatures. Ashen Scales +2. Instead of metal strips, this armor uses wyvern scales bound to a chain backing by means of a magical fire. The resulting armor is ash gray in color, and more flexible than standard splint mail. A ranger, Usher Skaken, made this armor after slaying several wyverns that were killing all the deer and elk in his forest. Also, before I forget, well, he won't buy these. I guess Ankeg plate mail is unique. This plate mail has been expertly crafted. Sheathed in the chitinous scales of the Ankeg, it provides a greater degree of protection than traditional plate mail, and it's not susceptible to rust. As any award-weary adventurer will tell you, however, the best appreciated aspect of Ankeg mail is its light weight and low encumbrance. Monsters come and go, but fatigue is a constant enemy. Keel's Buckler. This is the buckler of Keel the Legion Killer, firstborn son of Durlag Troll Killer and clan prince of his father's ill-fated tower. Its lightweight and excellent craftsmanship increase the dexterity of all who bear it by a single point. Shield of the Lost +2. Another good magic resist item. We can stack that with Baldur's sword. This odd shield was constructed by nomads that once inhabited the Forest of Mir, a group long since absorbed into civilized society and forgotten. Examination reveals fine weaving of animal and human hair bound together by enchantment, though how this was done is lost to time. Dragon Scale Shield +2. Another powerful item created by the Warlock Wormser. The shield consists of red dragon skin stretched over a steel frame. Green and white dragon scales adorn the red background, in a pattern that, when looked at in the right way, reveals the face of an ancient dragon. That's a really good item. Shield of the Falling Stars. +1. Ilmater himself enchanted this shield upon seeing a young squire's willingness to endure untold agony for the well-being of his mount. During a fierce battle between a human cavalry division and a hobgoblin horde, the young man was sent for reinforcements. He was beset by a cascade of arrows that nearly blocked out the sun, and knew that even if he avoided the arrows himself, should his horse fall, he would surely be doomed. With his shield in his body, he positioned himself to take the brunt of the onslaught, and was mortally wounded for it. His horse remained unscathed, allowing for their escape, and his body was carried back to the nearest town, where he was resurrected from death. Helm of the Noble +1. Helm of Glory, Helm of the Noble. Named for its original owner, Sir Tane the Noble, this helm saw many great battles in its possession. It was eventually passed on to Sir Tane's squire, who had served him faithfully for almost 10 years. Alas, the young man had neither the strength nor the skill to uphold his master's legacy. It is rumored he lost his life in the pursuit of a worthy but ultimately futile cause. The helm has had many owners since. A Gift of Peace +1. A Helm of Defense, Gift of Peace. Prized for its noble origin as much for its benefits to the wearer, this helm was originally intended to be a simple gift. There was no great crisis at hand, nor dangerous evil to be overthrown. Just a wish for a friend to give a gift to another. It could have easily been a good book or bottle of wine, but adventurers are eminently more practical in their gift-giving. The helm has seen many great battles since its creation, but the simple virtue at its core is what has always been remembered. Pretty good. The Eyes of Truth +1. Helm of Infravision, the Eyes of Truth. Being a scavenger of a sort, Babbitt Maelstrom had this helm created to aid her in her dungeon excursions. She would later attribute her gathered wealth solely to its power, though likely it was as much her keen eyes as anything. Pretty useless. I don't know why you'd buy that in this expansion at all. A Helm of Charm Protection. As its name suggests, the Helm of Charm Protection protects its wearer from any magical attempts at emotional manipulation. As a precaution, some high-profile mercenary groups regularly equip their members with such helmets to ensure that they can perform their prescribed duties without external interference. I'm pretty sure, wasn't it the cleric in, was it Nashkel that drops this? Alright, cool. Hey, we're done with 2 merchants. Okay, Pearly White Ironstone. Legend tells us this particular type of ironstone is crafted with the enslaved soul of a troll. This pearly white ironstone will grant the wearer the ability to regenerate at a rate of 1 hit point every 5 rounds. And Dusty Rose Ironstone. This ironstone glows with a dusty rose hue, hinting at calming images and sensations. While pleasing, it does not appear to enhance the basic protection enchantment upon it. I don't care about those, that. I guess the Cloak of Displacement. The Cloak of Displacement is a magical item that causes subtle shifts in the image of its wearer. It has the power to actually shift an individual's image by as much as 6 inches in any direction from their actual location. Aside from being an effective defense in combat situations, it has also been the cause of serious eye strain among fellow party members. The Nymph Cloak. The fabled Nymph Cloak is renowned for its ability to increase the charisma of even the most surly dwarf, a Cormyrean noble, hoping to make her politically convenient marriage more palatable, apparently went to great expense to obtain one for herself and another for her husband. That one was hard to read. The Frost Embrace. Boots of the North, the Frost Embrace. Stranded by his company for a sack of gold, Daviel the Frozen was left for dead in the midst of the Great Glacier. His dying curse echoed across the barren wastelands to the ear of Auril, goddess of winter. She smiled upon him, and his bare body was protected and preserved by his newly enchanted Boots of the North. With them, he crossed the iceland in pursuit of his would-be murderers. Driven by rage, Daviel took his revenge upon his previous friends as they warmed themselves in a tavern of the closest city. After his thirst for blood was quenched, they continued to travel to the frozen land, never to be seen again. Talos' Gift. Boots of Grounding. Untold years ago, the fortress of the Starspire Peninsula was placed under the direct torment of Talos when a favored storm herald was murdered there. Talos promised the destruction of the city by earthquakes, its isolation by tidal waves, and the death of its citizens by storms. One pair of these boots was bestowed to ensure that none but a single man would survive to tell the story of his wrath. Later, travelers seeking fortune in the ruined city came upon an aged man, maddened by the continuous destruction around him. The boots he wore would carry to many a distant land the legend of a city consumed by a god's rage. Worn Whispers. Boots of Stealth. In ages past, a king named Rygard was renowned for the spies he kept. So skillful were they that no nook or cranny escaped their eyes. Maps were held for entire castles and towns. Eventually betrayed from within, the tools of their trade were taken and dispersed, ensuring that none could amass such a band again. Senses of the Cat. Boots of Avoidance. The magic of these boots was specifically designed to detect incoming missiles and aid the wearer in avoiding them. They were originally commissioned by the instructor of an archery academy, who had tired of suffering accidents at the hands of his inexperienced students. Elves' Bane. Girdle of Piercing. An infamous highwayman in his day, Pandar of Scardale made quite a name for himself, vexing the elves of Cormanther Forest. To their annoyance, he continually used the wood to escape the law, and with all the aid of this girdle, the elves' arrows as well. Unfortunately for Pandar, pit traps and starvation proved a slower but effective substitution. Destroyer of the Hills. A Girdle of Bluntness. Having lost friends and loved ones to a series of raids by hill giants, Garara the Powerful made it his mission to cleanse his homeland of their presence. It is not known where he acquired this item, but with it he single-handedly dispatched dozens of the creatures, all the while protected from the blows of their clubs. The remaining giants fled to neighboring lands that lacked a similar champion and did not fare as well. A Golden Girdle of Ernst. Created to protect a powerful wizard against malevolent warriors, this magical garment is made of red silk strewn with golden flakes. It is enchanted to give limited protection against slashing weapons of any type. Girdle of Fortitude. This girdle greatly increases the wearer's constitution. King Baeloth used it when leading an expedition against marsh trolls. He'd been severely sickened in the past winter, and was no longer the healthy man he once was. The belt gave extra years to his life, and inspired his men to renew their confidence in their king once more. I'm not going to read that. The Dale's Protector 1. Just the Dale's Protector. Braces of Archery. During a dangerous meeting with a rival ruler, the King of the Great Dale requested the protection of his best archers in addition to his usual guard. The archers, each equipped with an enchanted bow and bracers, hid within range of the gathering. As predicted, enemy troops attempted to seize the king and force their will over his rule, but none had anticipated the amazing accuracy and lethality of the hidden archers. The king was able to escape unharmed, in fact. None of the ambush members even lived to approach him. Hands of Takuk. Gauntlets of Ogre Power, Hands of Takuk. The Hands of Takuk are exactly that, his very hands. He lost them when he attacked a strange man crossing the spine of the world. The mysterious man turned out to be a mage of incredible power, and he used Takuk's hands to create a pair of ogre skin gauntlets. Alright, the Brawling Hands. Gauntlets of Dexterity. This pair of gauntlets was likely developed in Karatur to aid masters of the martial arts. Legends speak of such masters from the Far East, bringing these items with them on their journeys, though details remain sketchy. Zarnus's second sword arm. Gauntlets of Weapon Skill. Perhaps the most well-known of the owner of these gauntlets was a mercenary named Zarnus. He specialized in smuggling and frequently loaned these gauntlets to clients if they were to travel with him. In his eyes, an extra sword arm was always handy. Gloves of Pickpocketing. A few years back, Fong Mu, a famous cut purse known in both Baldur's Gate and Othkatla, was found dead on the road between the gate and Beregast. Seems he'd stolen an artifact from a powerful mage and tried escaping, with little success. His possessions went to a nephew, who took up the same trade as his uncle, and became especially good at pickpocketing. Whether these gloves were magical before falling into Fong's hands, or if they somehow imbued with the master's essence, is not known. Whoops. Oh boy. Alright. I need to... Whew. Alright, Gloves of Missile Snaring. Foik Morer demonstrated the effectiveness of these gloves at a community fair near Beregast several years back. He paid a local archer to fire arrows at him. As the arrows approached, Foik's hands would move of their own accord, either knocking the arrow away or catching it. He earned more than a few pieces of gold for his troubles, and these earnings attracted some shadowy figures to Foik's tent that evening. The next morning, Foik was found dead and the gloves missing. Gloves of Healing. These gloves are usually given to novices of the most noble Order of the Radiant Heart, who have yet to acquire the ability to cast spells. For anyone outside of the Order to wear these gloves is a rare honor. The One Gift Lost. Necklace of Missiles. The naming of this necklace originates from its only owner, Akaida Morniv, who requested to regain his kidnapped daughter. Now many would help the determined father, but a kind and generous mage bestowed this item on him to aid his cause. Alas, the necklace was lost when Akaida dropped it into the Immerflow River while fending off bandits upon a suspension bridge. Unfortunately, it is rumored that the item was not needed to reunite the family once again. The Protector +1. Amulet of Protection +1. The Royal Guard of King Pyronin, a ruler of Impeltur, were given the Protector as an honorary show of status. Unfortunately, members of the Guard had trouble coming to a consensus amongst themselves as to whom the amulet should go. After years of internal hostility, the item was lost and the guards replaced by less greedy individuals. Shield Amulet. This amulet can be activated by a simple command word and a touch, with each use acting as one charge. The effect is a duplication of the first level wizard spell Shield. For the duration of the spell, the wearer will have a base armor class of 4 and further +2 armor class versus bonus versus missiles. The wearer also becomes immune to the spell Magic Missile for the duration. This is cumulative with any modifiers due to shields and magical devices. That was not a unique description. Metaspell Influence Amulet. Alright, Amulet of Metaspell Influence. Known for its ability to enhance spellcast. The Amplifier? Oh, anyway, known for its ability to enhance spellcasting. The Amulet of Metaspell Influence is highly sought after by magical practitioners. It was created by Eladrin Melwith, who resided in the Star Mountains. His reasons for fabricating such an item stemmed from his womanizing habits, and to this extent, the Amplifier served his purpose well. It was later taken from him by a mage with a more destructive intent, but records detailing the change of hands vary widely. Whew, okay. It's getting rough. Let's see. Amulet of 5% magic resistance. Commissioners working for the Athkatla City Council often wear these amulets while searching for spell users. The amulet provides some small protection against devious mages, who resist any efforts at being imprisoned or killed. Periapt of Life Protection. A heart-sized sapphire sits at the end of a thin silver wire. When worn, this periapt radiates life energy, infusing the wearer with power. The inscription on the back reads, "Against death we must all fail, but with this gem we may still prevail." A Necklace of Form Stability. Daidara of the Altered was a witch of great temper who rewarded the slightest insult with harsh punishment. Often this meant several weeks transformed into some form of wild beast, which of course earned her many enemies. It is recorded that she once fought a mage named Maxel, who had previously suffered such a fate. For his return, he had prepared this necklace, designed to prevent her changing his form, but he could not shield those around him as well. Apparently an impromptu army of farmers turned bears eventually overwhelmed him. Amulet of Spell Warding. A favorite item of protection for a mage entering a magical duel. This amulet provides protection against spells, but does not interfere with the mage's own spellcasting. Batalista's Passport. Ring of Fire Resistance. The Grand Mage Batalista intended this item to aid in his travels in the Plane of Fire, and it is said that he repeatedly summoned a salamander from that realm to aid in the construction. Salamanders not being known for their patience, it is likely he should have not pestered this instructor quite so much. The finger bearing the finished ring was indeed untouched by the inferno that claimed his tower. Had that finger still been attached, Batalista himself might have fared better. Druid's Ring. Ring of Animal Friendship. A Druid order and a Cormanther is said to cautiously guard the secret to the construction of these rings, which have never been seen in the possession of anyone outside their immediate membership. How this particular ring escaped the protection of their forest is unknown, but there are rumors that an outcast could have brought it into exile with him. Sand Thief's Ring. Ring of Invisibility. Held by a master thief for the better part of a generation, this ring was put to bold use in the markets of Waterdeep. Working a crowd in broad daylight, the rogue would steal countless numbers of purses from nobles, replacing them with bags of sand so the theft would go unnoticed. His identity was never known, but the name Sand Thief was cursed loudly in its stead. It is rumored he retired, and now lives among the nobles he used to rob. Alright, Ring of the Princess +1. This ring and several of its type were originally crafted to protect the sons of King Castor de Wes, though who uttered the enchantment is unknown. History records that the rings remains within the family for at least 13 generations, though they were all apparently lost within the space of one. Enmity between the king and the family of the creator may be to blame. The Victor. Ring of Energy. Crafted by drow mages of the Underdark, this weapon was used in an arranged battle between two rival houses. Each combatant was allowed to use a single magic item to aid his efforts. This ring was the weapon used by the victor of the contest, though he never laid hands on it. It was worn by a sibling and fired from the crowd, striking his opponent squarely in the back. Everyone witnessing agreed it was a brilliant interpretation of the rules. Topsider's Crutch. Ring of Infravision. Merchants that dare the risks of trading with the drow of the Great Rift are often given these items to aid in their movements underground. Man, it's a lot of reading. Alright. Ring of Regeneration. A lowly ranked red wizard named Huhus is said to have discovered the perfect way to distill troll flesh to make a potion that provided the same regenerative ability as that of the troll. Few were willing to drink the vile liquid, however, and decades later, a student of Huhus created this ring by building upon the foundations of knowledge laid by Huhus. Within the hollow cavity of the jade ring floats the ichor and brains of a troll. providing a limited regenerative capability to the wearer. Alright, Ring of Lockpicks. Derek Drack, one of the most talented burglars in the Shadow Thieves Guild, wore this ring on many of his scores. The ring enhanced Derek's already impressive lockpicking abilities. In the city of Athkatla, there wasn't a door that could not be unlocked by Derek. To activate the ring, the proper command word must be known, at which point the garnet stone in the ring will polymorph into the shape of a key that closely fits the lock. Ring of Danger Sense. Nizov's maze was a grand hedge maze created by the Archmage Nizov for his amusement. The maze boasted hundreds of magical traps, most of them extremely lethal. Nizov posted a reward big enough to buy a kingdom to the man or woman brave enough to enter the maze and reach its core. 1,000 tried and died, but one, Oteg Verm, completed the maze, thanks mainly to this ring which let him see where the traps were hidden. Alright, we're almost there. Alright, Harp of Discord. Even the most talented bard cannot get this harp to play in tune. Each stroke of the harp strings results in a harsh, off-key note. If the bard attempts to play a proper ballad upon the harp, its magical effects are released. All creatures other than the bard and his or her party must make a saving throw versus spell, or be confused for 30 seconds. Aslair's Harp. In the Twisted Court of Aslair, a bizarre ritual was enacted every night on the full moon. Within Aslair's massive palace lay a courtyard open to the sky above. This courtyard housed a large pool full of man-eating sharks. For amusement, Aslair would invite well-known citizens from nearby towns to his estate for an evening of dining and entertainment. This entertainment consisted of Aslair playing his harp, the effects of which removed any fear from his guests. Randomly, Aslair would single out a guest and have him or her walk into the shark-filled pool. When in a particularly sadistic mood, Aslair would first toss in blood, inciting the sharks into a frenzy that ended with the death of the helpless guest. Devotees of Helm finally lashed out against Aslair and his cruel practices, destroying the estate, slaying Aslair, and appropriating the harp for more beneficial uses. Method's Harp. In a valley far from most civilized lands, there once was a tiny kingdom called Childian. One winter evening, a trio of evil witches overtook the valley and imprisoned the royal family by casting spells of holding upon them. The witches planned to eat the family one by one. Later that evening, the witches were exhausted after a hard day of slaying innocents and desecrating the palace, so they called for the court bard to play them a song. Method the bard was loyal to his king and the king's family, and so used the special powers of his magic harp. As he played, he focused his attention first on the king. As the song played on, the spell of holding upon the king dissipated, and the noble liege slowly crept away. One by one, Method freed his patrons, being careful to keep the witch's attention drawn his way. Finally, once all the family was free, the bard could play no longer, and the witches saw his treachery. Poor Method, unlike his lieges, did not escape and were served on the supper table in their place. The Captive Audience. Gregan's Harp, the Captive Audience. This finely made harp is well known among the nomadic peoples of the East, though more for the infamy of its owner, Gregan of Lowhill. He was a bard of sorts, though less for his love of people than his hatred of hard work. He bade a mage relation construct this harp so its magic might disguise his utter lack of talent in the arts. Its power was greater than he had hoped, and he later turned to petty burglary using his music to captivate his victims. Gregan ultimately disappeared some years ago amidst the rumor of a bardic college uncharacteristically moved to violence. The harp still functions, though any self-respecting troubadour would reserve its use for the most dire circumstances. The mage seems to be a warning as well. The magic. Man, I'm falling apart. Eyes are starting to glaze over. The magic seems to be waning as well, and perhaps this is one item best lost to time. Alright, Glasses of Identification. Wearing these glasses allows the users to see magical items as they truly are. The proper instructions to activate the object appear like floating words before the wearer of these glasses. The glasses may be used 3 times per day. The glasses act much like a scroll of Identify, and that to identify an item, you right-click on that item. A menu will appear, and from there you will choose a scroll option. The item will now be identified. Alright, and these are all wants. Okay, I think we're done. Let me just check the other merchants real fast, make sure there's no unique whatevers.
How may I help you? Achoo!
Pretty sure we're all set. Oh wow, that took up the whole time too. Okay. I thought maybe that would go a little faster, but I guess not. Alright, I'm not gonna worry about spells this early on.
I hope this is worth it.
Alright. I'm gonna call it here. Next episode, we'll buy our gear and we'll set off to actually start fighting in the arena, which is the whole point of this darn expansion. That took a lot out of me. Alright. Hope you guys enjoyed that. There's a lot of flavor text, but that's one of my favorite things about RPGs and unique items in RPGs is the flavor text that you know, the unique items usually provide. It's always fun because it gives you an insight to the lore and stuff like that. It's just, they're fun. It's usually, they're all fun to read in some capacity. So, anyway, thanks for watching. Hope to see you guys in the next episode.